And now for something completely different.
Forget everything you've been told by others before. Get ready for the real deal, the full story, real talk about money, markets, life. Now, it's The Real Investment Show, presented by RIA Advisors.
It's that time, everybody. Welcome to The Real Investment Show. Guess what? It's Friday. So it's the Financial Fitness Friday edition. Everybody out there in RIA land, thank you for spending some time with us today. No matter what time zone or where you are in the globe, we appreciate you tuning in with us this morning. So thank you. If you don't know me, I'm Jonathan Penn. Everybody calls me John, family, friends, clients, they all call me John. I usually say my wife Shauna calls me Jonathan when I'm in trouble. That's when I know I need to come running. But today I'm very fortunate to have one of our senior financial advisors here joining me this morning, Sarah Buenger. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
It's been an early start for you this morning, hasn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
So Sarah's one of our senior financial advisors. She's also a certified financial planner, and we are very fortunate to have her. She is also on staff at Texas A&M University. She's a lecturer there for their financial planning program. So Sarah actually helps to teach CFPs to be CFPs. But you had a little bit of a drive to get in here this morning, didn't you?
It was a little bit of a drive, yeah. But it was nice. This early in the morning, it's not so bad.
That's what you have to do to beat Houston traffic. You just get up before everybody else does.
Yeah.
And then you have to leave before everybody else does too.
Yeah.
Right? Well, thanks for making some time to come in here this morning. So Sarah and I, we've got quite a bit to get into today, especially in the topic around, planning for college. If for all of you listeners out there, moms, dads, or folks that are helping to, just take care of, the younger generation as kids are getting, closer to that period of time when they're about to go off and start their college journey, or even before that. What do we all need to start thinking about from a college planning standpoint? When do those college planning conversations really need to start? What does that look like? What about different structures that you can use to put money into to save for, college? Are some more advantageous than others if you're concerned about, maybe needing financial aid, et cetera? So Sarah and I, we're gonna dive into that here in just a little bit. But before we do, just a kind of a touch on the markets here. So, so far for the year, I mean, we all know that we had the volatility earlier this year after the whole, Liberation Day announcement and how markets reacted to that. And we really saw a market pullback, kind of the max drawdown was on April the 8th. And, since then markets have been strong. And now it's amazing how quickly as investors we can forget that volatility that we had earlier this year. And now arguably markets are a little frothy. They're a little, pricey. And Lance and Michael on our investment team, they've made it very clear that we wouldn't be surprised if the market had a little bit of what we would call a healthy pullback between now and the end of the year. If markets kind of pull back here a little bit, kind of get some of that froth out of prices, we wouldn't be surprised about that. We're not concerned about it. Markets they go up and down, right? They don't always go up 100% of the time. And I think folks are paying very attention to I think investors out there, Sarah, they're always looking for like a narrative. What's next? What's going to keep this market going higher? What's going to, keep this momentum behind these prices, right? And I think markets too are very keyed in on the Fed and what is the Fed doing with interest rates? And not so much that, hey, the Fed just reduced rates recently. I think it's also around what is the Fed saying? And is the door open to more interest rate cuts before now and the end of the year, which we think very likely that there could be some more interest rate reductions here before the end of the year. So I think investors are always they're always looking at what's next, what's the next narrative, right? But as as I know you visit with, individuals and families every day. So I guess, Sarah, what concerns are you hearing from folks right now that you're speaking with? Are there some common themes or common concerns from a market or investing perspective that you're hearing about right now?
The biggest message that I'm getting from clients most recently is just kind of wanting to pull back on the exposure. Mm-hmm. We've had some good returns in 2024 and 2025. And so I think people are acknowledging that and they're thankful for it. And they kind of want to pull some money out of that risk. just to put the gains on the table.
Yeah.
And so, that's the biggest challenge, is to think about, is this the time to do that? And what would be the opportunity cost if they did that?
Yeah. And so are you hearing from folks, is this an all or none where they want to be completely out? Or is it, hey, we just want to take a little bit of profits here? Or is it a little bit of each?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you seeing the same thing?
Well, so I think so. I am hearing concerns from folks that, hey, markets have they've had a strong year this year, right? And markets had a strong year in 2024. I mean, the S&P was up just shy of 25% last year. You look at 2023. The Standard & Poor's 500 index was up 26%, right? So you've had like 2 and almost 3 years of so far of very solid returns, right? So I think I just had a conversation with a client earlier this week, where now we're looking to next year, 2026, cash goals, funding needs. What do they need for income, just for their living expenses, or certain goals that they have set aside, right? And as part of the planning process and looking at cash flow needs, expenses, what are their goals, especially if somebody is in more distribution mode in retirement. I always like to have extra cash on hand that can support those withdrawals. So that way, all of the investments that we use are publicly traded, so they can all be converted to cash within one business day. They're all very liquid, but what you don't want to do is put yourself in a situation where maybe you are needing to raise cash at an inopportune time where markets are pulling back, right?
Right.
So I too am hearing from folks, hey, John, I wouldn't mind if you guys took a little bit of profit here, kind of took some of these gains off the table, kind of set it off to the side. And I will say that is something that our investment team will do on a proactive basis, right? When positions are getting a little bit frothy, or we have really nice gains in positions in the portfolio, our investment team will go in and they will proactively trim to raise that cash to kind of put that over into the cash bucket in the portfolio. And some of that cash is then used to fund goals or needs, or it's also there for reinvestment purposes, right? So, but I had a conversation earlier this week, and we are raising cash now. It's not a all out decision. It's, hey, we still want to have enough exposure to equities in the portfolio, so that way if markets continue to grind higher, we can still participate.
Right. No one has a crystal ball, so it's not clear when the market will have a correction,
right,
or if it will even occur this year. So all we can do is be positioned appropriately and have our strategy in mind.
Correct. So I don't think it needs to be an all or none decision, because in my experience, just through my financial career, and when folks make that determination, that's it, I'm either all in or all out. You're really trying to, in my mind, kind of time this perfectly, and that's impossible, right? And to this day, Sarah, there are folks that I visit with who said, hey, back during the great financial crisis, I went to cash completely, and I've been waiting for the right time to get back in. I'm waiting for the market to pull back. I'm waiting for that perfect time where stocks are reasonably valued, and guess what? They're still waiting. And look at all this opportunity that they've missed out on from the growth since then, right?
Right.
So I think we have to kind of balance this very strategically. So I think if in my opinion, if there's any sort of cash needs that you need for the next year, it's good to make sure that you have, especially if you're in distribution mode, it's good to have, I think at least, depending on your situation, a good 12 to 18 months of dry powder of cash set off to the side, so that way that money is there to fund your goals. But if you're concerned about markets and froth this year and you want to take some profits, go ahead and take some profits. But I don't think it needs to be an all or none decision, right?
Yeah.
So a question that I get too a lot is, let's say I am all in cash right now. So there's been a lot of folks that have been investing, interest rates have been attractive. Now the Fed's starting to bring rates down. So folks that have been kind of in that T-bill and chill, or maybe they've been resting money in, money markets that have had a pretty attractive interest rate. Now folks are concerned that those rates are starting to come down. So some questions I'm getting is, hey, John, I feel like I need to start putting some of this money to work. I want to start putting this into a more growth-oriented portfolio. But what does that process look like, right? I'm just curious, are you getting questions around that too?
Yeah, I'm getting the same kinds of questions, especially for brand new clients that come in that haven't invested with RIA before.
Yeah.
So combination of people who've been satisfied in fixed income for the moment. As rates start to go down, those rates are going to disappear with them. So we need to migrate portfolios to something that includes equities. For new people that come in with just cash, it's also the same conversation. How do we get invested in a responsible way that gives them some exposure but doesn't put everything in all at once?
Right. So that what Sarah was just talking about there is internally what we call portfolio onboarding. And this is a discussion that all of the advisors here that we have on a very regular basis with our investment team is how do we approach this, whether it's a new client relationship that we're working with and we are forming that investment strategy and how are we going to put that money to work, or for clients that have been with us for years and there's an event that they have, there's an event where they realize some additional dollars and that new cash or that those new funds come into a portfolio. How do we start putting that money to work, to Sarah's point, in a responsible and I think a thoughtful manner, right? And there's not a perfect approach to this, and that's why I think a lot of firms, Sarah, when they're starting a relationship with a client or new dollars come into a portfolio, hey, whatever the strategy is, let's just call it, maybe it's a 60% stock, 40% bond, like a 60-40 type of split, that overnight, boom, that 60%, it just goes all into equities. Right?
Right. And that's not necessarily the best path.
Right. It might be the easiest path for the advisor, right?
True. Mm-hmm.
It might. And we could do that. Let's say if we just kind of threw money in all overnight. And then who knows what happens? Maybe the Fed comes out and says, and he tickles his right ear and the market goes, "Oh, he just tickled his right ear. That's a great sign." And all of a sudden markets take off running to the moon. If we just put money in all overnight, maybe the client might look at us and go, "Geez, John, Sarah, I mean, y'all are brilliant." Right? But at the end of the day, we just got lucky.
And it could go the other way as well.
See? So we got to look at it on the other way, right?
Yeah.
Because what we don't want to do, I would say, I think a lot of I don't want to say most, but I would say, well over a majority of the folks that I work with, just directly, they're very concerned around what you call sequence of returns risk, where, they want to put money to work, but at the same time, they don't want to leave themselves exposed to a major pullback right out of the gate. And that's what you were just referring to,
Yep.
right?
So for me, the most important piece as part of a rate of return is the entry point, because that's going to really impact how much you can get from that investment over time, how successful it's going to be. So what I like most about RIA is that we do a customized approach. So, if a client has certain parameters that they want to stay within, we can do that. I also like that we can onboard at different speeds for different clients if we need to. So putting some at work in the beginning and then maybe purchasing on when we purchase for everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I think compared to most, from what I understand, just with kind of what practices are out there in the financial industry, I also appreciate that about our firm, Sarah, is that we can take, a patient approach when it comes to deploying dollars into a market environment, right? And at the end of the day, and here's what this comes down to, and you're going to hear me say this, and I don't want to speak on the behalf of the team here, but this is a very common comment is, the folks that we work with, the individuals and families that we serve, these are their dollars. It's your money, right? It's their money. And so at the end of the day, we always want to make sure that we are on the same page together and that the approach that we're taking, that the clients are comfortable with this and it makes sense, right? So I too am very appreciative that we can take a patient approach. We just don't have to throw everything in overnight. It doesn't have to be an all or none decision.
Correct.
Right? Mm-hmm. We can take a patient approach to this. So that way, to Sarah's point, we can get enough dollars working so that way if markets have strength, you benefit, you participate. Are you going to get all the upside of the market if we do that? No. But I think folks are more concerned with, they don't want to get all the downside either, right?
Right.
So I think, those are some common questions, concerns that I know that, I get on a regular basis. Sounds like, Sarah, that you get those too, right?
I do. Mm-hmm.
And, I am hearing from folks that they're okay with us taking a little bit of profit here, just kind of refilling up the cash bucket a little bit, right? And it's very bespoke from one client to the next, right? And I just feel very fortunate that we have the flexibility to do that. And I think some of these concerns too, I know in addition to the market discussions, the portfolio related discussions that we all have with clients, we spend a major portion of our day helping people look at, all sorts of different financial moving parts of their overall situation from a planning standpoint, right?
We do.
And one of those areas is college planning, right? How about that for a segue, huh? So anyway.
Nice transition.
So that college planning piece is a regular conversation that we have with individuals and families. So Sarah and I are going to dive into some things here, but I guess what I'd like to start with, Sarah, is, for folks out there, moms, dads, with their sons and daughters, is when, is there, as their children are ready to start, going off to college, they're getting ready for those next chapters in their life. When should families really get serious around looking at, having those college planning conversations, what schools the kids want to go to, looking at the applications process? Is there a certain time where you say, hey, this is really where you need to start having those kind of more serious conversations when it comes to kind of next steps for school?
I hate to say this, but it should start earlier rather than later.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to go ahead and start introducing those kinds of conversations a freshman year. Freshmen probably are not 100% thinking about that at the moment. You start kind of having those serious conversations right around junior year, senior year, where you're kind of honing in on exactly what you plan to do as far as the application process and what schools you're targeting. So earlier on in a person's age, like first part of high school, maybe have some colleges in mind, start doing the research about how much they cost per year, what's the cost of attendance, if they're going to stay at home or if they're going to rent someplace, if they're going to stay on campus, all those kinds of questions. Just kind of start testing the waters on where you're going to go and get your group of target schools ready. Do the research up front the same way you would about any other large purchase. This should be looked at similar to, any other purchase, a house, car. You're paying for college. It's a product. They're giving you a sticker price and the cost of attendance. You should be able to look at the sticker price of a college and decide whether or not you want to pay that. And so that kind of helps narrow down the conversation once you get a few schools on the list. And then, at that point, you're starting to kind of decide what characteristics you're looking for in a school, which ones are the best, and then you've got your target list that you want to apply to. By the way, application season is now opened in August. So if you have not already applied, your student has not already applied to those schools, they need to get busy on that. Although application season is open for most schools until December, the earlier you get your application in, the better chance you have of getting into those target schools. So that's very important. And another point is, even if they have eyes just for one college, you want to have them apply to several, just for purposes of having a backup plan in case your first option doesn't work out, but also to give you some negotiating power in an appeal process. So that's kind of what you're looking at there.
So if I can, so you mentioned the appeal process, right? And negotiating power. So that might be something that is a little bit of it might be a foreign concept out there for folks. So when you talk about the negotiating process or the appeal process, or could you expand on that a little bit, or what that might look like?
Absolutely. A lot of people don't know that there is an appeal process. Yeah. So what an appeal process is, it just means that whenever you apply to a college, you get accepted, and maybe they'll come forward with scholarship offers from the university. presidential scholarship or, some kind of academic scholarship for your student. This is particularly talking about the ones who are high performers. So when the college comes forward with their offer, it's usually around February, somewhere around there. And then you have the opportunity to appeal that offer and ask for more money. And to do that, you should have other college offers in hand. So for example, let's just put some college names to it. Let's say you're applying at A&M, you get their offer letter, you get their financial aid, which includes scholarships, you get that offer back. And I'm not talking about necessarily needs-based scholarships, but merit scholarships. So you get their offer letter back, and it has certain scholarships as part of that package. Let's say you also applied at Texas State, and you also applied at Sam Houston, and you also applied at University of Houston, and maybe some branch campuses of A&M, like A&M Corpus Christi or something like that. So have a handful of other colleges and their offers back to your student, because if they're offering you presidential scholarship at another university with bukus of dollars on the table, that is negotiating power with A&M to throw a few more dollars your way. And I'm not saying that it's going to end up, full ride scholarship or anything like that.
Yeah.
But just out of personal experience for us, we did this with all three of our kids, and 2 of those appeal processes came back with thousands extra.
Is that right?
In scholarship.
Yeah. I just thought it was, so everybody out there, I just thought it was interesting when Sarah was putting schools down as examples, but for some reason the University of Texas wasn't mentioned.
Absolutely
I'm just putting
not.
that out there. So I just noticed that. Just mentioning that in passing. That's okay, right?
No, nothing against UT. Nothing against UT. It's all in good fun. But of course, as an employee of Texas A&M and as a former Aggie, always an Aggie, but former student, I'll always tend towards A&M.
Absolutely. No, that's good stuff. We like to have a little fun in here too. You got to laugh a little bit. You got to smile. Plus it's Friday morning, right? So hey, you know what? Let's have a little fun with this. So
we actually come from a mixed family, so we've got some Longhorns in the family. Our my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, and all 3 of their kids are all Longhorns, and we're all Aggies. So it's fun when we get together.
So I would think that the holiday season would be an interesting time sitting around the table.
Absolutely.
Can you pass the platter of stuffing? Oh, it just hit the floor. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. Hey, why are there A&M stickers all over my car covering up all my UT? It's just fantastic.
We're actually pretty civil to each other, but it's fun for sure.
No, that's good stuff. So part of the application process is the FAFSA.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So, could you, if you wouldn't mind, elaborate on kind of what the FAFSA is, and then is this something does the FAFSA need to be utilized, or do you have to apply or use the FAFSA with every school?
You don't have to.
Okay.
I don't think it's a requirement that you fill out the FAFSA. It's a good idea to do so because it could open up aid that you don't know that you qualify for. A lot of times people, if they have a nice salary, they'll just forego the FAFSA. They just automatically assume I won't get any aid, so what's the point of applying?
Yeah.
Some schools encourage it no matter what, and they make that part of their scholarship application process. So if you want to open yourself up for opportunities for scholarships from that university, go ahead and fill out the FAFSA. It's not that onerous to do so. And what we've had sort of in our landscape in the past couple of months is some tumultuousness as far as the Department of Education, some laws impacting higher education. And so one thing that has not changed, though, is the devotion to FAFSA. So it is still there. Core functions like that are still necessary. The FAFSA opened on October the 1st. And so go ahead and start filling that out. Again, this is something that's on a first-come, first-served basis for financial aid. So the sooner you complete and submit your FAFSA for your student, the faster they'll have access to aid, and there will be aid available to give. Once the colleges run out, they run out. I mean, if there's only so many dollars to give and you're not one of the first ones in line, then that's a problem. So
Yeah, it's almost like you're going up to your local. I shouldn't. This is a terrible analogy. This is a terrible analogy, but this is what just came to my mind right now, and it's Friday morning, so I'm just going to let it rip. I kind of, that's very similar to me. Like when I'm going to go get some really good brisket at my local barbecue place, I got to get there really early, or if I don't, all my brisket's gone. First come, first serve, y'all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Sorry, I got brisket on my mind.
That's the way it goes.
Maybe some brisket tacos.
Yeah.
Oh, I see Brent, or he's like, yeah, give me some brisket tacos. So sorry, all that.
Now I'm getting hungry.
Now I made Sarah hungry. I totally derailed the whole conversation. I'm good at that. No, that's great. So first come, first serve on the FAFSA, right?
Yeah. So even though there's a due date that's later in the year, like on the FAFSA website, I think they quote June of 2026 as your deadline to apply. You want to go ahead and get the application in ASAP. Some universities have an earlier deadline. Some may have December. I think A&M's deadline is January of 26. So go ahead and get it in, though, first, because, again, you're getting in line for some of those funds if they're available.
So we were talking a little bit about, scholarship, and, scholarship season is here. And, I sometimes I get questions from folks on how do I even know, how do you even start the process of knowing what scholarships are even possibly available that one could apply for? So is that just information that's just readily available through whatever the school or university that somebody's son or daughter is looking at? Is that all publicly available, or is there a good resource? Like where should folks kind of be directed to even explore what scholarship opportunities might even be out there?
First, look at your target schools.
Yeah.
Find out from their website what scholarships they have to offer and what scholarships your student might qualify for. So that's very first step. Second step is to go to your high school guidance counselor. Usually, maybe even on the high school's website. On our high school's website, there was a list of scholarships that you can apply for students that are local scholarships. So they'll have the most up-to-date list for all of those. Apply for everything you can apply for, everything that you qualify for, and just see what happens. Of course, don't speed through them. Put some quality responses together and have somebody edit that stuff for you. But then after that, if you're looking for the college scholarships you've applied for, or you've got on your list the local scholarships for your area, also think about other sources. So fraternal organizations like Knights of Columbus, or religious organizations. That is a religious organization, but you get the point. Find organizations for things that you're involved in. So groups, religious groups, things like that. Even look at your grandparent as well. So is your grandparent a member of certain organizations where you can apply for a scholarship? All of those are good points. We were successful in getting a scholarship through my kid's grandma.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So you never know.
And I like how you suggest, hey, kind of put all of these various opportunities in. I'm a big spreadsheet user, so organize this, right?
Yeah. So what to do? I mean, you can do what you want, but what has been successful for us is to get those scholarships onto an Excel spreadsheet where you've got the name of the scholarship, the date that it's due, the contact person, and just a status of what's happening. So have you applied? Are you pending a response based on information from someone else? Those kinds of things tracked on the Excel spreadsheet, and then have a comment section where you can kind of put the latest status. That way you can track all the activity for the scholarship season, I call it. And technically your student is doing all this, but as the parent, you can kind of introduce these ideas to them. So, help them a bit. Maybe introduce the idea of the Excel spreadsheet and tracking it on there, but then you can use that to sort by your maturity date or your due date of the scholarship, and then track it. So start a couple weeks early and just get through those things. Put it on the calendar to work on this scholarship this week, this scholarship next week, etc., until you've got all of those done. It's not easy. Everybody in the family, families these days are a lot busier.
Yes, they are.
I think you can acknowledge that. I can definitely acknowledge that as well. So with a busy schedule with sports and extracurriculars and all that, it's really hard to fit those in. But if you start that Excel spreadsheet and kind of budget a couple weeks ahead, you can put them into the calendar and find spaces where you can fit to focus some time on that.
Yeah, it's a process, right? And I think you have to kind of take an organized approach to this to keep track of everything. So I like the way you have approached that with your own family. And I think that's a very organized approach that I think makes sense. And I know there's been a lot of changes too around like education loan limits. Right. So all of this, I mean, this all ties together when you're looking at your FAFSA when you're applying to schools, and what sort of maybe aid would the school provide to you from a financial aid standpoint, looking at various scholarship opportunities, because look, at the end of the day, college just isn't cheap. Right. And I mean, when Sarah and I and our teammates, when we're putting together, financial plans where, moms, dads, adults, they're looking at you're looking at your own next chapters of your life for a retirement planning standpoint, and just making sure that you've got the assets to support your lifestyle in the next chapters of your life. At the same time, you're also kind of, you're trying to plan for this other major, potentially large expense, and that's college planning. And how much, are you as a parent willing to, let's say, help contribute to the educational cost of your child, or a loved one that maybe you're taking care of. And that's a struggle sometimes, because sometimes, Sarah, I see like with me, with my situation, I was very blessed that my parents took care of my school. They paid for it, right? And so my wife and I we've extended the same opportunity to our girls, right? I mean, right now there's been, some financial and, academic scholarships that our girls have received. So we have been very fortunate that we haven't had to cover 100% of their school, right? But I know there are a lot of folks that I work with out there where, maybe, they paid their own way through school, and they expect their children to do the same. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's not a right or wrong approach to this, but sometimes this can be kind of a constant struggle that I see in families, where even maybe within a married couple, there may be disagreement where one says, hey, I really want to help our kids get through school, and the other might say, I want them to have more skin in the game. But I think this all comes down to the fact that, college, just like the cost of higher education, is not getting, and this is not the best word, it's not getting cheaper, it's not getting less expensive, right? And now there are some newer, some lower education loan limits for both students and parents, right? So this all kind of ties together around that college planning piece. So would you mind, Sarah, could you kind of elaborate on kind of the revised, or what those lower education loan limits are for parents and students?
Yeah, absolutely. So to help a little bit with the cost of college, at least there's some relief out there in the immediate term. Texas is one of 2 states that actually has a tuition lock. So tuition rates for the 2026-27 academic year are not going to increase. So even though there's a high education inflation rate, Texas is one of 2 states that is keeping it the same for next year. So that's good. At least there's that positive point to look at. And then you come to the funding as far as what you've saved as a parent. And again, to get to your point, John, that is a personal decision for each family, depending on how much you want to put towards your kids' education. Once you've got that savings piece out of the way, if there's still not enough, then the student could be looking at work, part-time work during that time. That's something that all 3 of my kids do. Yeah. One does it through the summer internships, and the other 2 have jobs. So they're all contributing to some extent to their education. Then after that, the next line of defense is potentially loans. So if you haven't been able to save enough and your kids are not able to get scholarships and they're not able to work or work enough to cover the costs, then you're looking at potentially having to take out some loans. The student loan debt issue is something that's been ballooning. I think the administration is really focused on that. They're trying to rein in the problem, so they're trying to make small adjustments to somehow sort of quell the issue forward-looking. One of those is to lower the amount that you can get on maximum student loans. They don't want people to irresponsibly take out as much loans as possible, and then just particularly use it on tuition, but also a lot of other things as well. So they're limiting those now for parents and students as well. You can take, as a parent, $20,000 per year on those loans. For undergraduate students, those are capped for each year of attendance. So freshman year, you can take $5,500. Sophomore year, you can take $6,500. And then junior and senior year, you can take $7,500 in student loans. And those could be subsidized or unsubsidized. So subsidized means that the government is paying the interest for you. Unsubsidized means that the interest is accruing for you to pay at a later date. One key thing I did want to mention, and before that, graduate and professional loans per year can be $20,500.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to mention about having a student loan in the first place is that even if it's an unsubsidized loan, meaning that your student is on the line for those interest payments, keep in mind that they start on the date of the loan. So even though you don't have to pay that loan back until after they graduate, the compounding and interest starts on the date of the loan. So you do have the option to go ahead and prepay or pay during the school year that interest. And so that's something that if you do end up having to get loans, that's something that I highly recommend, is going ahead and paying the interest on those loans each month so that the compounding doesn't end up kicking you in the butt later.
Yeah, because most of the time, the quote unquote the payment, those payments for those loans start. It's usually 6 months after one graduates from school, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can kind of prepay or be paying in along the way, that way you're not getting this. It's almost like, in my mind, it's like this big balloon that you have to start paying when your child finally gets out of school, and those payments start rolling in about 6 months, right?
Right.
So maybe start prepaying that interest maybe to make that a little bit more manageable.
Yeah. One other topic around student loans is I find it interesting that families, we already talked about the fact that each family is kind of on a spectrum from wanting to support the cost 0% to 100%, and anywhere along that spectrum a family could be located. What I'm finding is that, a lot of times families do want to contribute. They can't do the whole thing, but they're willing to kind of put themselves on the line to fund that cost. But one key thing to note is, never sacrifice your own retirement security for the purpose of funding a goal for your children.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, you can take student loans, and while it's not the best option, it's definitely something that you could consider versus a retirement loan. You can't really do that. There's no, parent loans to retire. You've got to have your own funds for that. And so if you're selling yourself short, then you're the one that suffers at the end. Yeah, your kids are going to have to take care of you anyway because you won't have any money left.
Yeah, so hey, I'm happy to pay for your school, kiddos, but guess what? You're going to be taking care of me when I'm
I'm moving in.
As Rich would say, as I'm drooling in my soup. Right? Hey, right. So what's your retirement plan? My kids.
Right,
Yay.
right.
Well, do your kids know that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, or I hear people say, well, there is no financial aid for retirement.
Exactly.
Right? So that's sometimes there's a balance, and having those conversations with your children when they're, even in their junior high school years, kind of set those expectations of, hey, here's, as a mom or dad or as a parent, here's what we're willing to contribute, but it may not cover all the costs. So what are some other ways that we can help? Like, what are some ways that you too, son or daughter, can help contribute to the pot to take care of this? And I see today now I see more and more young adults who, kids, in my mind, they're kids because my kids think I'm a dinosaur. But when they're graduating from high school, maybe they're not going off to a major 4-year in-state university. Maybe they're starting to get their basics done at the local community college, and they are working, right? They've part-time jobs, and they're helping to contribute to the pot, and they get their basics at one of their local community colleges, and then maybe they transfer to a 4-year school to finish out their last couple semesters there, right?
Yeah, that's definitely an option.
Yeah. So, and I see, too, I have more and more conversations as of late where parents are telling me that their son or daughter are very interested in like technical skills, welding, becoming, professional, becoming, HVAC repair, electrical engineers, just getting more into the trade side, because the cost of those schools for those trade schools, it's just, they're more reasonable than paying for like a 4-year in-state school, right? So there are options out there, and some of those kids that are going into trades, like those professional trades, and then they're, their income looks very attractive, right?
It does, and I think that's a path. It's a growing path for a lot of kids. With the AI developments that are coming out, we've got a lot of potential for developments in that space, and at the same time, people are a little bit fearful about the replacement of jobs with AI. And so we've already seen some students complaining about not being able to get hired.
Yes.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Perhaps their job was then taken over by AI. So, coach your kids about not only when you're thinking about a profession, but thinking about going to college, major in something that is not going to be taken over by AI, or at least you don't think it is. It's a hard choice, but technical skills, physical things,
Yes,
can't be replaced
right.
with AI. So there's a lot of conversation, a lot of support for that.
Yeah, there's something to be said about being able to create and do something with your hands, right? Now, and I've heard too that, I don't know if that's completely safe from AI. I think AI is creeping into those areas to try to make those areas more efficient from a time standpoint.
But AI is not going to fix your AC.
Yeah, exactly.
AI is not going to put your roof on or build your house.
Exactly.
So there's something to be said for those physical trades.
Absolutely. So seeing more and more of that as well, where folks are just kind of looking at, well, here's the cost of going to a 4-year in-state or out-of-state school, and this is maybe what my earnings potential is as a graduate coming out of school, and maybe, hey, am I saddled with all of this debt when I come out of college as a student? Or, hey, there's the route of I can follow these professional technical professions, have a little bit of less cost, and maybe come out of school earning a really nice income, right? So there's a lot of that conversation going on too right now. So we have a couple minutes left, and so what I want to do is talk a little bit about there are some different ways to start. There are different account structures that can be used to set money aside for future college planning. Sometimes, Sarah, sometimes the question I get is, "Hey, John, is it better for me if my son or daughter may need some sort of financial aid or scholarship in the future? Of the various account structures out there that I can put money into to save for a future college need, 529 plan, maybe a custodial account. There's the Coverdell, the education savings account. Or, hey, John, should I just set up a regular brokerage account that's just maybe in my own name, and I set money aside in there for my son or daughter? Sometimes folks are very concerned. I want to set this up in an account that offers me the most flexibility in case my son or daughter needs to receive some type of financial aid in the future. Is there, of those accounts that I just kind of listed, Sarah, is there one in your mind that offers more flexibility in that space over another?
Absolutely. So if you're looking to save for college, there's a couple of tax advantaged accounts you can save into. You can do 529. You can do the Coverdell education account. You can do a UTMA, or you can do brokerage, like you indicated. So of those, the 529 is probably the most flexible as far as what you can use the funds for, contribution limits, the tax treatment of those funds, and the impact on FAFSA. Education savings account is also useful as well, but the issue with that is you can only contribute $2,000 per year. So if you're starting when they're born and you're contributing $2,000 a year, it could accumulate to a good amount. But a lot of times people can't contribute to those because they've got income beyond the ability to do so.
Yeah.
So there are phase-out ranges where once you surpass certain income ranges, you can no longer contribute to ESA. if you're able to, there is a small benefit of doing the ESA because the investment options within that account are wide open versus the 529 where you're limited to what's available in the plan. So you can kind of equate a 529 to maybe a 401k,
like a 401k,
where they're giving you some
Yeah.
limited options available. And your ESA could be more like an IRA where your investments are wide open. But on the 529, if you're using that and it's a parent-owned account or a child-owned account, there used to be some pretty negative rules around that on the treatment for FAFSA. Those accounts now are not included in the asset calculation. So they're kind of excluded from what you're putting forth. The grandparent-owned 529 used to have some negatives attached to that as well.
Yeah.
Now on a grandparent-owned 529, well, let's talk about what used to happen. On that account, let's say I owned an account for my grandchild. Owning the account doesn't include it in their assets for FAFSA, but any distributions from the account are counted as income for that child, which is actually incredibly negative in the financial aid calculation. Now they've reversed that. So a grandparent-owned 529 is no longer a negative for FAFSA.
Yeah, just thank you for going through that. I find that to be still just that's a question that I receive on a regular basis when folks are looking at setting aside money for school, and I mean it's just flat out confusing, right? There's so many different choices and what ifs, and I think folks just want to make sure that when they get started on their college planning journey, that they kind of get off to the right start and set things up correctly initially, so that way 15 years, 18 years down the road when their children are ready to start going off to school, they've put themselves in the most flexible position that they can for that option, right?
One more point, John. On the 529, they've amended the ability to use funds for technical school.
Yes.
So a lot of times parents would steer clear of 529 because they wanted to leave the option open for their child to do a technical type or professional type school. Now 529 funds can be used for that purpose.
Yeah, and there was some recent changes with 529. Sometimes a question that I get is, hey, John, Sarah, if we're fortunate that there's money left over in the 529 that we didn't use for our children's school, now there are some rules in place where, and there's some rules to this, but if that 529 plan has been in place for 15 years for the same child, for the same beneficiary, now there's the potential, you could, if there's leftover dollars in the 529, if it makes sense, there's an opportunity to move those dollars into a Roth IRA for the student, for the child, right?
They can. To do that, the account would need to be open for 15 years for that child, and you can contribute $7,000 per year towards the Roth. So even let's say there's a balance of $35,000 at the end of college, you could contribute over 5 years $7,000 each year to the Roth, and kind of clean out that account.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you for all of your time and expertise this morning, Sarah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too. So, these are all, college planning, retirement planning, these are all conversations that we have with folks on a regular basis. We all like to teach and educate, right? So I hope that this discussion this morning has been helpful. If you have more questions, things that are on your mind that maybe we didn't cover, reach out to us. Stop by our website, realinvestmentadvice.com. I said that really fast. Let me slow down. I have had too much coffee this morning. realinvestmentadvice.com. How about that? Stop by our website. Let us know what's on your mind. Let us know what questions you have, because we're happy to come in here into the arena, as I say, and to talk about it. Because if it's on your mind, chances are it's on somebody else's mind too. So again, go by our website, realinvestmentadvice.com. Let us know what's on your mind. We're happy to talk about it here. And again, thanks for spending some time with us today. See you next time.